Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Imperial Diecast. And in today's episode, I want to review a car that is a very special car to me because this was the first 1/24 scale diecast model car that I ever bought in my life. And I got to give you a little bit of the background to why exactly I bought this car. I mean, of course, for a lot of you, this comes as no surprise. It's a Lamborghini. Little kids buy Lamborghinis. And you know what? You're right. The first time when I came across the Lamborghini Murcielago was when I was 14 years old. It was in the year 2005. For Christmas, I had gotten a video game called Need for Speed Most Wanted. I'm sure a lot of you know that from your childhood as well. It was a really good game. You played as a racer and you had a blacklist consisting of opponents in the illegal street racing scene, and you had to gain your own car back, which was a BMW M3, I think. And that was stolen by the top dog of the blacklist, and you basically had to work your way from the very bottom. Of course, the Roadster was not part of that game. The Murcielago Coupe was in the game, but still, that was when Lamborghini became my favorite car manufacturer. Back then, I did not really know about the whole concept of diecast model cars and all that. Fast forward a few years, I graduated high school with honors, and as a result, I went and spent a vacation in Malta with my family. This was in the summer of 2009. And Malta and Gozo are actually quite beautiful, although quite hot islands in the middle of the Mediterranean. They got some impressive Knights Hospitaller churches there, and a lot of history dating back to the Crusades. And I was a fan of the medieval period as well, so that's one of the reasons why I also went to Malta. Anyway, near the cliffs of Malta, which the capital Valletta is surrounded, you have these promenades where you can walk, and it's really beautiful there. And at one of those promenades, there was actually a little stall where they sell newspapers and all kinds of stuff. And at the counter there, I actually saw this diecast model car. It was a Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster, which is the one that you're seeing in front of you. And I wanted to have it immediately because I didn't collect any diecast model cars apart from the 1/18 scale BMW 328i, which I've also done a review on YouTube. And apart from that, I didn't really have any diecast model cars, so I bought it. I think it was like 15 euros back in the day, which was a little expensive, but then again, you are in the middle of a tourist hotspot, so. Long story short, this ended up being the second diecast model car in scale 1/24 that I owned. The other one was the Ferrari F355, which I have also reviewed if you just check the link in the description. But let's talk about this car. So, finally owning a diecast Lamborghini Murcielago, I was really happy for a long time. And I forgot about the car. It was just, sitting at my display shelf for several years, until I finally started collecting diecast model cars in fall 2015 again, and then I basically expanded my collection in 1/24 scale because I already owned two cars in 1/24 scale. And later on I began collecting 1/18 and 1/43. Now, as you know, Lamborghini has a tradition of naming its cars after celebrities from the world of bullfighting. And by celebrities, I don't just mean the human ones, I also mean the animals, the bulls. And this car is actually named after Murcielago, which is a fighting bull from the 19th century. However, at the same time, Murcielago is the Spanish word for bat. So, it's named after the bat, and at the same time after an actual fighting bull from the 19th century, which had this name. Now, this car was styled by Luc Donkerwolke, a Belgian, I think, car designer. And he was Lamborghini's head of design from 1998 to 2005. While the Lamborghini Murcielago Coupe was produced from 2001 to 2010, this Roadster was released in 2004. This is the first generation Murcielago Roadster, and it was followed by the LP640 Roadster, and you can tell the two apart by the taillights, which I will show you in a bit. The first generation was simply known as Murcielago. Subsequent versions incorporated an alphanumeric designation to the name Murcielago, indicating their engine configuration and output. For example, LP640 would indicate a mid-mounted longitudinal engine and 640 the horsepower. However, these first-gen cars are never referred to as LP580s. The first generation was simply known as the Murcielago. So this car is obviously yellow, It's a metallic yellow that Lamborghini calls giallo midas, named after the guy who could turn anything he touched into gold. Motormax also makes this car in 1/18 scale, although I'm not sure if they also make it in yellow in that scale. Maisto makes one, but I think in 1/24 scale. You can only get the one by Motormax. Now let's begin this car's review by taking a look at the front. Now you were probably able to tell a while ago that the headlights of this Motormax look a lot better than any pictures you've seen on the internet of this 1/24 scale model, and you know what? You're absolutely right. What I decided to do, because I was so unhappy with the way the headlights of this Motormax looked, was to take the car apart and see if I could take the headlights apart and then paint them and then put them back the way they were. And you know what? This is one of those diecast model cars where that's possible. So here's a little tutorial where I'm going to show you really quick how I managed to do that. All you need to do is to unscrew the bottom of your car. So this is what the bottom of this model car looks like. And you can see that there's 2 silver screws at the front. All you need to do is to take those 2 screws apart, and that way you can remove the front part of the undercarriage, which you can see right here. And what you then will see is that the headlights are actually fastened with another pair of screws. This is not really common in diecast model cars. Usually they're soldered in place, which means you cannot take them apart easily. But in this case, it was pretty easy because there were screws. So I unscrewed those bronze-looking ones, and then I could take the headlights out. And then I painted them simply using black paint. I mean, you can get a lot of these in hardware stores, but I collect Warhammer figures, so a paint that I used was a Citadel paint called Abaddon Black. And then I used a little bit of silver. I think the Citadel paint in question is called Stormhost Silver, to paint the rims or the edges of the light bulbs, to give them that extra bit of detail. Because if you look at the real car's pictures of the headlights, the entire headlight is not in silver, so it's just the edges of the light bulbs. And I gotta say that the difference is like night and day. It looks a lot more like how the real Murcielagos headlights look. And at the end of the day, the headlights really are a big part about whether or not a car looks good. With that being said, however, I think that Motormax did a solid job in representing the badge. Of course, if you look at this badge, it's actually bigger than the correct proportion would be on the real car. So in this 1/24 scale diecast model car, it should be a lot smaller. But because it's a little bit bigger, it's easier to read what it says, and it says Lamborghini, and you can see the golden raging bull. Now, if we move further down, you can see that this car has 2 air intakes up front. And apart from the headlights, which I have fixed, these air intakes are arguably the worst looking part about this car. You can see that while other models usually have a black mesh here, even if that mesh isn't perforated on the cheaper ones, here we actually don't even have that. What we have instead is a sticker with a honeycomb pattern on it. And then apart from that, you also can see the peg, so that just does not look good. Now, I was thinking about painting this black, maybe, so that it looks better, but I might do that. You got a clear plastic windshield. And we even have the single wiper blade. The mirrors, you can see that there's kind of a badge there. And the mirrors themselves are glossy, so that's nice. So here's a look at the side profile of the car. You can see that it looks sleek, just like any Lamborghini does. I like how there's barely any panel gaps or shut lines on this car. It's also nice that Motormax decided to include window panels on the doors for this 1/24 scale model car, because usually you would not expect window panels on this scale unless it's a welly. So that's good that they actually did put some in. Although you can see that they have the typical Motormax tint, which I really don't like, because even other budget manufacturers like Maisto or Burago really offer you this clear plastic windshields, whereas on the Motormax they just ever so slightly have a tint. The main windshield here up front does not, of course, but these side ones do have a little bit of a bluish tint going on. which is not something I like. In real life, the Roadster is 7 cm lower than the Coupe. It's also an all-wheel drive car. Let's take a look at the rims. Because these rims are definitely one of the most intricately exotic rims out there in existence. They're called Hercules rims. You can look it up. Now, even though this is just a 1/24 scale car, and even though it's a Motormax on top of that, they actually did put some detail into the brake discs and brake calipers of this car. I mean, it does have them, and not only that, but the brake discs have actually, they're ventilated, They have the whole pattern in them, so that's good. And they're also slotted, you can see right here. And here is the brake caliper. Now, unfortunately, this brake caliper moves along with the wheel, so that's not good. But I do like these rims here. I mean, I just like the Hercules pattern. I don't see other 1/24 scale cars with them, even other 1/24 Lambos. So, that being said, what they could have done was put Lamborghini logos in the center, but they didn't. So instead, I just took a Sharpie and kind of like tried to make the Lamborghini badge appear on the rims, but it doesn't look that good. Still, I think it's better than just nothing, right? Like from the distance, you'd think that it does have the Lamborghini logo in the middle. Anyway, here's a look at the rear wheel. And you can see that right here, we actually have a little indentation in the car body. And that's where the 6.2 liter V12 badge would have been. But they didn't even put a sticker for that, so that sucks. At least what they did do was model the side air intakes, as you can see right here. However, I had to paint the center of the air intakes black because they came in a kind of an eraser color, sort of beige. Didn't look that good. But now it looks a little bit better, as you can see, from back here. And there's the other side. Now let's move on to the back of the car, shall we? So remember when I said earlier how you can tell the first generation Murcielago apart from the LP640? Well, as you can see, it's by the taillights. I mean, these are segmented taillights, so they look completely different from the other ones, which have like a kind of a floral pattern in the middle and are completely red, which are the ones on the 640. The center of the exhaust tips was not painted black, so I just blackened it a little with Sharpie. And if you look at the back vents over here, again, it's not a plastic piece with a grill pattern, and instead it's just a sticker. So some people will find that a lot worse looking than the black plastic pieces, but at least you do see a kind of a honeycomb pattern, which kind of looks interesting. Although it's too metallic, like they should have emphasized the black more than they did the silver. At least the taillights are done well. I mean, there's no peg in the middle, like usually you'd find on 1/24 scale cars, and it does look exactly like the taillights of the first generation Murcielago. In the middle you have the Lamborghini logo, and apart from that there's not much else to say. I mean, we do not have a license plate, so that's missing. And now moving further up, you can see the engine cover, and over here we have a realistic looking closed spoiler. I mean, you can see that the indentation kind of makes it look like you can lift it if you wanted to, but of course you can't. But here's a closer look at the engine bay cover. And again, you can see the honeycomb pattern that's repeated here. So it's actually transparent. Let me show you. If I just lift this up, like so, you can see that it is transparent. I mean, there was no real reason for them to do that, because it's just a 1/24 scale car, but they did, so it's good. So looking at the car's engine, I mean, you can see that the engine bay cover lifts up like this, which is nice. And now if we take a closer look, I actually like the amount of detail that Motormax put here into this engine. Although they could have colored the cross brace black instead of all of it being silver. What I do like is that if you take a closer look at the engine blocks themselves, they have Lamborghini written on them. And the silver lines are actually raised, which you can see right there. So it's pretty detailed. The 6.2-liter naturally aspirated V12 engine installed in these first-generation cars produces 572 horsepower at 7,500 RPM, accelerating the car from 0 to 100 km per hour in 3.8 seconds, and with a top speed of 330 km per hour. Right, and now let's close the engine and check out the interior. This is how the doors open. This is my favorite part about any Lamborghini. They're called scissor doors, although this one doesn't really like to stay open all the way. Then again, you have to keep in mind that this is an almost 10-year-old car in my collection. So let's check out the interior. The interior of this car is nothing to write home about. I mean, it is a 1/24 scale car. On top of that, it's a Motormax, so you cannot expect much from the interior. The best part about the interior is that it says Lamborghini on the center console, which is nice. You also have the buttons on the center console, the CD and everything painted. Silver shifter. Shift buttons also painted next to it. The vents on the dash have some black coloring, which is done very crudely. And you do have an instrument panel that is basically a sticker. What I would have liked is if the steering wheel would have had a silver trim, but it doesn't. On the other hand, they do have provided us with painted floor pedals, with a little bit of texture on them as well. No dorsal branding, of course. This is a 1/24 scale car. Still, I mean, the interior does look like the real car instead of it just being something random. But they could have put in a lot more detail than this. I was thinking about painting the entire interior black so that it looks better than this kind of dark gray. But, I don't know if I'll have the time to do that. Here's another look at the seats. At least they do give you realistic looking seats, so that's nice. And that's about it. And here's a look at the car's undercarriage. And what's interesting is that I've seen diecast reviews of the 1/18 scale Motormax Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster, and there they don't have the transmission and parts of the drive shaft painted silver, whereas on this 1/24 scale model it is, so it actually looks pretty good here. You can see the riveting in the middle, although it's a little bigger than it's supposed to be. And up here it says Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster made in China, scale 1/24 by Motormax. Of course, there's pretty good wheel spin. And the wheels can swivel from side to side. The steering corresponds with it, just a little bit. And here's another close-up of the semi-auto single-clutch transmission, which is called E-gear. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys like this review of the 1/24 scale Lamborghini Murcielago Roadster by Motormax. It was one of the first diecast model cars I got, so it does have a special place in my collection. And I'll see you in the next video. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.